welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special welcome to our listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, U.S. listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541. Or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, spike in bush fire. And in the second watch, when she, not he, is the abuser. For our social media question, we ask, do you really believe a woman can abuse a man? And why? We're asking you to share your responses on our Love 101 FM Facebook page and YouTube channel. And also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125 using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
All right, good morning, good morning. Today's I quote says, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And this one is from Winston Churchill.
Yeah, good morning, Joka.
Good morning.
Sound words there.
Agreed.
Yeah, we can't add or delete from those words and that statement. Well, the first watch after this break.
It's back to school and time to do the math. Limited funds divided by big school fees.
Stretched budget minus book list, backpack, and new uniforms.
With Sagicor Bank Back to School unsecured loan, you can borrow up to $5 million. No security needed. Fast approval. Up to 5 years to repay. And flexible loan options.
Problem solved.
Dad, crown.
Thanks, Daddy.
Be crowned a Back to School champion parent with Sagicor Bank unsecured loans. Apply at sagicor.com. Conditions apply.
You know what happens when you mix one packet of Tang? Flavor, freshness, and good vibes fill the whole big jug. It keeps giving more and more, enough to share with family and friends. Now with vitamin C, D, zinc, and fewer calories, so everyone feels great. Make Tang and turn any moment into something delicious. Tang, the flavor that keeps giving and refreshing.
On the next episode of The Mailbox, we will be taking a deep dive into the unique blend of literature, culture, and community that make up the Logos Hope experience. Logos Hope is the world's largest floating book fair, offering over 5,000 book titles at affordable prices. The ship serves as a platform for cultural exchange, education, and community building, with a crew of over 300 members from 70 nations. You are invited to join the conversation with our international guest, Eduardo Boxkowski Jr. from Brazil, Tyrese Archie from Trinidad and Tobago, and Marco Rohibal from Argentina, as they share about their journey on the Logos Hope. That's Wednesday, August 13 at 5:30 p.m. only on the family station. Love 101, The Mailbox, Monday.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Now, Jamaica is experiencing a significant spike in bushfires, with a 95% increase in February this year compared to January. And according to the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, the Honorable Desmond Mackenzie, those are startling. Now, the Jamaica Fire Brigade reported 1,303 bushfires in February 2025, with St. Catherine and Kingston St. Andrew recording the highest numbers of incidents. Well, to give their perspectives in this regard, we have online Commissioner Stuart Beckford, head of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, and is it Damart Williams, Senior Director of Zonal Operations, Forestry Department. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, and morning to your listener, and thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for joining us so early in the morning. I begin with you, Commissioner Beckford. Um, anecdotally, how common are bushfires in Jamaica, especially on an annual basis?
Well, from a statistical point of view, it represents just about 50% of the fire calls that we respond to in any 1 year, especially going back over the last maybe 3-4 years, where we have seen an increase beyond what would have normally been, an acceptable number of bushfires in any 1 year. So anecdotally, it represents approximately 50% of the fire calls that we respond to.
And that figure is alarming. Is it something that has been happening over a number of years?
Well, it's alarming in the sense that there's no doubt that the climate is being impacted by climate change. So we are seeing periods of longer drought. The Met Office would have announced earlier this year that significant portions of the country is now experiencing drought-like conditions. And that is what is, one of the major factors that has been driving the number of bushfires that we are seeing across most of our divisions. You mentioned some in your introduction earlier. But there are some divisions, for example, Portland, that has always been a very wet parish. Over the years, we have seen an uptick in bushfires taking place along the eastern belt of the island, which are generally wetter than other sections of the island. So there's no doubt that what is happening in the environment on a whole is driving these bushfires. There are a couple other factors which, if you allow me, I can quickly get into.
Well, let me bring in Damart Williams, and we come back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Williams, what really is a forest? Because you're the forestry department, but is it just having a couple of trees? Do you have a forest if you have 5 trees around? And what is the general situation reforestry in Jamaica today?
Yes, good morning, and thanks for having me on your program this morning.
Welcome, sir.
Right. Well, forestry department is mainly responsible for management of our forest reserves within Jamaica. Our forests normally have large clusters of trees on them, and that is what we...
You have a minimum amount to make it regarded as a forest?
Not necessarily a minimum, because we do have forest reserves that don't have a lot of trees on them. But in terms of the forests that we manage, the majority do have a lot of trees. But there's not necessarily a minimum, so to speak.
Okay. And the general situation in Jamaica, how many of these reserves do we have in Jamaica today, would you say? Anecdotally.
Well, we have approximately 200 forest reserves.
200?
Yes.
Wow. And that is in each and every parish?
Yes, we have forest reserves in every parish that we manage.
And the more mountainous parishes would have more of those, would you say?
Well, the largest forest reserves that we have are the Blue Mountain Forest Reserve that span the parishes of St. Thomas, Portland, parts of St. Mary, and of course St. Andrew. We also have the Cockpit Country, which spans the areas of Trelawney and also Manchester. But the majority of our forest reserves are mountainous areas. But we're looking also to ensure that we manage spaces outside of those areas within our urban areas as well. And the bushfires that you mentioned earlier, even though we typically refer to those bushfires as forest fires, we are also seeing an uptick in the fires that we see within our urban spaces, within our urban forest areas.
Interesting.
That's also a source of major concern for the forestry department.
That is interesting. Commissioner Beckford, why is that? I mean, based on what Mr. William just mentioned.
Well, as I indicated, the issue of climate change is no doubt having
Oh, that's a major
significant.
thing right there, climate
Yes,
change.
because if you look across the globe, as we speak, Greece is burning, France is burning, Turkey is burning, Spain is burning, section of Canada is burning, the United States, California is burning. And so it's something that is affecting even countries that in the past we would not have seen bushfires occurring in necessarily. The temperatures in some of these countries are, 44 degrees Celsius. So they are experiencing real hot conditions, and we are experiencing some of that here in Jamaica. So that is what is driving the bushfires. Because what happens when we have the kind of drought condition that we have is that all the moisture, in the ground is dried out, and those areas now become tinder dry and are susceptible sometimes through spontaneous combustion, sometimes through human interaction with the environment. And once a fire gets going in these areas, with that kind of condition, they're going to spread rapidly because, again, there is strong winds that are sometimes impacting how quickly these fires spread. And one of the things that we as a fire brigade has to be mindful of is how we tackle some of these fires where they exist. As mentioned earlier, there are some that may exist in some areas that are inaccessible to us. In those instances, we rely on the JDF.
Yeah, we come into those to how you tackle these issues. But you mentioned about spontaneous combustion. For those who do not know, may have forgotten. What is that?
So that takes place when there is significant heat taking place in an area that will cause, as I said, material that are tinder dry to self-ignite without any human interaction taking place with that environment.
And that happens often, or it is a rare occurrence?
It doesn't happen that often, but we do see it, especially in the mountainous areas at times. But it's something that do happen from time to time.
Yeah. Okay. Gentlemen, we're going to take a break right now. Then we come back to more on this very interesting topic.
You're invited to listen to Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. We'll give you tips on how to make your money count, how to save, and how to grow your worth. It's all inside Dollars and Cents, brought to you by BPM Financial Limited, taking you higher. That's Dollars and Cents every Thursday at 8:16 a.m. on the family station, Love 101.
If you love good food, fun, and time with family, make a good move to the 2025 Grace Food Festival. Join us on Saturday, August 23rd from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Hope Gardens. We've got something for the whole family, live entertainment, Kiddies Village, sponsors booths, delicious meals, and much more. Tickets cost $1,000 free sold and $1,500 at the gate for adults, with free entry for children under 12. See you at the 2025 Grace Food Festival.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And this is the first watch. We're looking on the concerns in regards to bushfires in Jamaica. In so doing, we have online DeMart Williams, who is the Senior Director of Zonal Operations at the Forestry Department, and the Commissioner of the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Commissioner Stuart Beckford. Welcome, gentlemen, again. Good to have you still with us.
Thank you.
Great. DeMart Williams, what are your concerns now? Bushfires, their impact on forestry in Jamaica today.
Well, our concerns are similar to those of the Commissioner. The fact is that over the years, the Forestry Department has grappled with significant numbers of forest fires. The moniker is somewhat different. The Jamaica Fire Brigade refers to it as bushfires, but the Forestry Department refer to the phenomenon as...
And it's the same thing.
Forest fires.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, right.
Okay.
But the concern that we have is the impact that it has on our forest ecology, and the fact that areas that we, for example, have seen as areas that are ripe for reforestation have been affected by these fires as well.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is also that we interact a lot with persons who carry out activities within the confines of our forest reserves and also on the outskirts of our forest reserves. And we recognize that these are the individuals who are the main drivers of these forest reserves. So what we have been doing over the years is we have been seeking to interact with them on a one-on-one basis by way of undertaking what we call a forest management or forest fire management training session. This represents a joined up approach between the agency, the forestry department, as well as the Jamaica Fire Brigade.
Good.
And we have seen some measure of success over the years because we go directly to the individuals, we show them how to prevent fires in the first place. And in the event that is an actual fire, we show them as well how to manage and how to reduce or suppress those fires.
And who you say these individuals are, Mr.
These are
Williams?
typically farmers who practice slash and burn, and we see that as one of the main ways in which our forest fires commence. And that's one of the reasons why we go directly to these farmers in terms of our capacity building initiatives.
And what has been the response to that over the years?
It has been quite good. It has been quite heartening because we have seen where when we go back into the communities and we do our assessment or analysis, recognize that the farmers are in fact taking on some of the approaches that we have brought to them within their private spaces, whether it is within the forest reserve, which is an illegal activity. Let me just point that out. But also on their private lands as well. And where we have the interventions, we have seen where there are some reductions in the numbers of forest fires. And so again, there's some success, but there's still some work to be done. I kind of harken back to your quote that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Failure is not final.
Yes.
So wherever we see that there's some amount, there's not as much success as we'd like, then we, of course, go back again, we change the approach, we do re-engagement activities. So that is a mantra that we also adopt at Forestry Department.
Yeah, before I bring back in Commission, I want to drill down on something you mentioned, the illegal activities. Is slash and burn an illegal activity?
Yes, it is.
And
right. Under Section 31 of the Forest Act, if you keep, kindle, or carry a fire within the confines of a forest reserve, then you are liable to prosecution and you may face a penalty of up to $200,000 and in default of payment, 2 years in prison. So this is a very serious offense because we know the substantial effect that fires have on our forest resources.
But those who are doing it, they argue that that's the most efficient method that they know. Some persons have grown up seeing their family members doing this for decades, ages.
Right. And that's part of the reason why we have these capacity building sessions as well. Because we say to persons that you ought not to light fires within a forest reserve. If it is that they see the need to, then we tell them that they should have what we call fire lines or fire breaks, and that they should remove the fuel from certain areas within the space that they're going to be burning. That will reduce the likelihood of the fire spreading to other areas as well. So we're looking at management in a total way.
Yes.
So we do recognize, as you said, a reality that some persons, this is something that they've been doing for generations now.
Yes.
And it may be difficult to have that cultural shift in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
So we're looking at other ways and means that they can light fires, but do it in a very responsible way.
And while we're at it, somebody burning their garbage in their yard. What does the law say on that? Do you know?
Well, it depends on in the context of a forest reserve. It depends on how close that yard is to the forest reserve, because under the forest regulation, If
Oh,
that is taking place within 1 kilometer of the forest reserve,
it's
then
illegal.
that's also an offense, right? And
Okay.
that carries with it a maximum of $50,000 under the regulation or 1 year imprisonment
I
for
wonder how many
payment.
Jamaicans know this. Eh?
And and this is why we're having this type of conversation on here,
Yes.
because we want to ensure that persons know these things.
Yes.
Because a lot of persons do not, as you rightly pointed out.
Yes. Commissioner Beckford, you had alluded earlier, but you want to zero in, narrow it down in terms of hotspots in regards to bushfires. Can you tell us
Yes,
some major hotspots? No pun
yes.
intended.
Totally understand. Yes, we have, as you mentioned also in your intro, the parish are, as we refer to them as divisions. So the divisions of St. Catherine, St. and Clarendon.
No man, where in these parishes? Can you
All right.
narrow it
So,
down?
for example, in St. Catherine, one of the things we have noticed over the last 2 or 3 years in relation to St. Catherine, a lot of the burning that we do respond to takes place along both stretch of highways. And as Mr. Williams mentioned earlier, a lot of that has to do with, because there's still a lot of farming taking place uh, along the stretch of highways, subsistence farming, so to speak, not large scale, but the issue of slash and burn has been a perennial problem. And as he rightly pointed out, we have had several intervention programs, to try and educate farmers generally, but members of certain communities and the risk of slash and burn. You touch on the issue of cultural change that is required, and that's going to take time. And where we have intervened, as he pointed out, we have seen some success. Where we are having a challenge is that those divisions are parishes that we never used to have many bushfires in, because of the change in the environment, in terms of the climatic change, hotter, drier, windier. We are seeing parishes, divisions that we never normally experience, a lot of bushfires, that fires are occurring in those divisions. So St. Catherine, as I said, given that the inter-island or the interior of the parish has now been opened up because of these two highways, people, are now farming in areas that they would not generally farm because they had no access road to get to those sections of the parish. So we are seeing a lot of subsistence farming taking place, and slash and burn is one of the main drivers
And
of
that's
that.
not only slash and burn to somebody just throwing a cigarette butt.
Excellent. Excellent point. And you are right. Some of what we see along this stretch of highway do occur because of that. There's somebody maybe in their car smoking, whatever they're smoking, and then they discard the remains of that without putting it out. And so we encourage motorists, if you're traveling along these stretch of roads, because, as simple as a cigarette butt or whatever it is, but given how dry the time is, it doesn't take much to get to start a fire. So a simple spark.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Williams mentioned, in terms of the 1 kilometer away from the forest reserve, because the fact is that embers sometimes travel even further than that.
Yes.
And start a fire. So you may see a fire burning somewhere down the road and you're wondering, but there's nobody here interacting in the environment.
Right.
Highly
Started
unlikely
somewhere
that
else.
there would have been any spontaneous combustion. So it's a fire. That fire would have started because somebody is burning somewhere else a kilometer or so away. And that ember would travel and land in an area that is tinder dry, as I said, and will start a fire. So those are some of the factors that are driving what we are seeing. While we are heartened in some of the areas, especially where the farmers are, in the Blue Mountain, as he mentioned, down in St. Elizabeth, and where we have had intervention, we are seeing reduction in those areas in the main, generally. But where we have concerns now is those parishes that were once considered to be, wet and would have regular rainfall. There's an absence of rainfall in those parishes, and that is what is now impacting us in terms of the numbers that we are seeing in some of these parishes.
Hearing it loud and clear. Damart Williams, if or when major damage is done to forests as a result of fires, what is usually done to restore such forests? Can you share that with us?
Right. It depends on the type of damage that takes
Of course.
place. So, for example, if it is that damage takes place in a predominantly Caribbean pine forest, then what happens is that nature normally regenerates itself. So there's not much in terms of intervention that is required on the part of
You just
agents.
leave it
However,
and it naturally
naturally regenerates, right?
reforests. Okay.
Right. So in other forests, however, we go in and we first do an assessment to determine the cause of the damage, and then we seek to do our analysis in terms of what is the best approach going forward in terms of our reforesting that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
So the typical approach is that we go in and we replant the area if it is that there's significant damage. In the main, however, a lot of these areas that have suffered damage by way of fires are, in many cases, inaccessible to us. They're far removed.
Yeah.
So we're not able to do that detailed analysis and assessment that we want, neither the reforestation. But that's how nature is. Nature tends to regenerate itself. So you see an area that was burnt last year, and when you come this year, it's a totally different area. It looks totally different. You may see evidence of burning, for example, charring off from maybe the barks of trees, but you see, as a natural regeneration taking place within the space. But that's the beauty of nature.
Yeah. And on the same wavelength, Commander Beckford, can you just quickly give us an idea of how the process of extinguishing these bushfires from your angle?
Right. So our main medium of extinction is water, and with the dry condition, restriction and the availability of water through the NWC main and so on. That now poses a challenge for us in how we tackle some of these fires that are occurring in areas that we do have access to.
The mountainous regions, how you deal with that?
So the mountainous region, we do respond to those, but once we get there and do our assessment and recognize that they are inaccessible to our crew on the ground there, we generally touch base with JDF, and they are very responsive in this regard.
And what they do?
So they would use their Bambi bucket.
What kind of bucket?
Bambi. That's what it's Bambi. Yeah, Bambi bucket that is attached to the underbelly of the chopper.
Uh-huh.
And so they will use that and go to an open source to scoop up water and then fly over and
so the open source will be like one of the dams?
Yeah, like the dam.
What?
Yeah, more likely the dam than any other, because there are no open source in Kingston that is that large. Because where we do rely on them is really in the Kingston and St. Andrew, the hills of Kingston and St. Andrew.
Yes. And you use drone technology as well?
Right. So we use that to do the coordination between us and JDF, and we do that sometimes to assist us in making a quick determination whether or not this is something that we can take on, or do we need the assistance of JDF. So once we get a call in the hills, our drone team is usually mobilized, and along with one of our pumpers, and they'll go in and do a quick rapid assessment and make a determination as to the method of extinguishing that fire that we need to adopt.
Yeah, I've seen some things in America where it's like a mass of foam that is coming from an helicopter or even a small plane. Do we have that?
No,
access?
we don't have that capacity here in Jamaica. So what you're referring to is retardant material that they are dropping on the fire so as to prevent it from spreading.
Yes.
We don't have that capacity in Jamaica. As I said, JDF is the only entity that agency that can assist us in that regard.
From the fire brigade. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so very much. I think we understand a whole lot more, at least I do, in terms of bushfires and how they are extinguished. Thanks for joining us. Have a safe and productive day.
Thank you for having me.
Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
Start your journey with a JN Small Business Loan with small business loans as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million. The time by JN Small Business Loan is
7:30.
Mama work hard, for real. She do the most to send me and my brother go school. So, the dream was always to go to university. Well, I fulfilled 2 dreams with 1 Jane Bank savings plan, I further my education and I make mama proud.
Save so you can make the park, travel far, graduate like a star.
Stop wishing you could. With your Jane Bank savings, you absolutely can. Jane Bank will help you find a way.
Celebrate the end of year in style at the Montego Bay Convention Center, where elegance meets excitement in the heart of paradise. Planning a corporate gala, holiday, or New Year's Eve party? This world-class venue is the perfect place to end the year. Book now and get 10% off all rooms for end-of-year events. But hurry, dates are going fast. Montego Bay Convention Center, where it all happens.
Brunswick, tuna the only option. Give me the one thing, no, me no want a fraction. Brunswick tuna, morning, night, or noon. Me say me ready for the action. Brunswick tuna, they for me plate. Inna the evening for dinner, inna the morning for me breakfast. You can have it anytime, anyway, with couple slices of bread or crackers. What's convenient, taste good and affordable. Brunswick tuna, Brunswick tuna. Love me under the pitney in a school. Chunky nice, spicy Thai chili, jumping water. Tuna, Brunswick tuna. Snacking made easy, snacking made tasty, snacking made healthy.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In both newspapers, PMP launches 10-pillar Mission Jamaica Love Manifesto. And at the same time, JLP says that PMP manifesto is uninspiring. Also, we see that more than 40 women expected to contest general election. Good. And then future PMP government will significantly reduce electricity costs, says Paulwell. We also see that preparations will advance for new academic year, says the Education Ministry, and Guyana among 23 nations added to UK's Deport Now, Appeal Later scheme. Interesting. Those are some of the major stories in our newspapers. Coming up next, we'll share some of the feedback from our social media question. Do you believe a woman can really abuse a man? And why? We're asking you to leave a comment on our Facebook page and the YouTube channel, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
There is hope.
Life can feel overwhelming at times, but you don't have to face it alone. The Ministry of Counseling and Prayer of the Edgewater Baptist Church is here to support you with our caring and confidential telephone counseling service. Whatever you're going through, grief, stress, family challenges, or just feeling stuck, our trained counselors are ready to listen, pray, and guide you toward hope and healing. Take the first step today. Call us at 876-220-6474 or 876-332-7956. Weekdays between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Help is available through the Prayer and Counseling Ministry of the Edgewater Baptist Church. Remember, help is just a phone call away. That's 876-220-6474 or 876-332-7956. Weekdays between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Call now and let us walk this journey with you.
Happy, 'cause you have straight.
Don't let freshness ditch you when you need it the most. Wash your clothes with Downy Softener to keep dazzling everyone around you from day to night. Try Downy Softener now.
If you love good food, fun, and time with family, make a good move to the 2025 Grace Food Festival. Join us on Saturday, August 23rd from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Hope Gardens. We've got something for the whole family, live entertainment, Kiddies Village, sponsors booths, delicious meals, and much more. Tickets cost $1,000 pre-sold and $1,500 at the gate for adults, with free entry for children under 12. See you at the 2025 Grace Food Festival.
On the next episode of The Mailbox, we will be taking a deep dive into the unique blend of literature, culture, and community that make up the Logos Hope experience. Logos Hope is the world's largest floating book fair, offering over 5,000 book titles at affordable prices. The ship serves as a platform for cultural exchange, education, and community building, with a crew of over 300 members from 70 nations. You are invited to join the conversation with our international guest, Eduardo Boxkowski Jr. from Brazil, Tyrese Archie from Trinidad and Tobago, and Marco Rohibal from Argentina.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's now join Jokal for a look at how our Facebook, YouTube, and WhatsApp friends answer today's question. Do you believe a woman can really abuse a man, and why? Jokal?
All right, so we have some responses here. The first one is from Edna in Montego Bay. Let's hear from her.
And stuff. Yes, I do think a woman can really abuse a man. Yes, I've seen it where women abuse men, and it's not so prevalent as on the men's side, but women do it. And most of the time it's verbally abused more than even the physical. Yes, I've seen it, and it happens a lot. So women it's easier to talk about our abuse. We as women, easier to talk about our abuse. The men, some of the men, them keep it shut in. They don't talk about it. So sometimes we don't really know what's really going on. Yeah, but it happens. It does.
All right, thank you so much, Edna. Monica says, yes, some women are the aggressors, abusers, and the guilty offenders in relationships, guilty of verbal, physical abuse, and or even infidelity. Their men/husbands tend to be the quiet, decent, non-confrontational type and are taken advantage of. Sherry in Spanish Town says, yes, I believe and know that a man can be abused by a woman, and it's not a matter of a man being weak. Abuse has no gender, no color, no status.
Okay. Well, interesting comments there. I want to thank the ladies for their comments. So we segue into the second watch. Shakari Richardson was arrested on July 27 for allegedly assaulting Coleman, that's Christian Coleman, her boyfriend and fellow sprinter. The incident reportedly started as a dispute over headphones, with surveillance footage showing Richardson grabbing Coleman's backpack, yanking it away, shoving him into the wall. And Coleman declined to press charges, stating he didn't think Richardson should have been arrested. Now, Richardson subsequently posted a video on Instagram expressing remorse for her actions and acknowledging her past trauma and the pain which contributed to her behavior. She emphasized her commitment to self-reflection, accountability, and seeking help to ensure she doesn't repeat the same mistakes. So, I've read a lot about men abusing women, but little about women abusing men. And to discuss this phenomenon, we have joining us in this, the second watch, Professor Wendell Abel, Head of Community Health and Psychiatry in the Faculty of Medical Sciences, and Professor Karen Carpenter, Head and Senior Lecturer of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Great. Good to have you with us.
Professor Carpenter, how are you doing?
How are you? Good morning. We're only meeting online, eh?
Thank God for technology. Thank God for Love FM.
Yes.
All right. Now, professors, assuming that you are aware of the aforementioned development before we mention it in the preamble, what are your opening thoughts, beginning with you, Professor Carpenter?
Well, before I share my thoughts, let me just make a slight correction. I'm no longer the head of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. Dr. Delia Bean is now the head of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies. I'm the former head.
Okay, thanks for the correction.
Yes, so just so that we give Dr. Bean her rightful place.
Oh, yes.
Yes. This is something that actually came to my attention more than 20 years ago. And it came to my attention because of articles coming out of the UK, the United Kingdom, about male victims of domestic abuse and their attempts at setting up helplines, etc., clinical services for men who were the victims or survivors of domestic abuse. So that was the first time I actually became aware of it as a mental health, public health issue. So it's not new.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Are you through with your opening statement?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Professor Abel, your opening salvo.
Well, first to say that when we think about domestic violence, we usually think about women being the victims, of course, and very often don't realize that men can also be the victims of domestic violence. And as Prof. Carpenter pointed out, it's in recent times that we started to look at the data coming out and also to talk about it and to address the issues. Yeah.
Yes.
Unfortunately, more attention is given to women when they are victims. Yes. And in many societies, we don't talk sufficiently about men being victims of domestic violence. And I suppose because that is usually associated with probably more shame. Yes. But it's important that is discussed.
Yeah. And I just want to make sure, that we are on the same page. We have used words like abuse and violence. Is there a difference between both of them within this context of this discussion? Professor Abel?
And then Karen,
okay. All right. All right. Professor Carpenter, ladies first.
I don't know that these are mutually exclusive categories because obviously violence is a form of abuse, but there are abuses that don't. You see, when we think of violence, we often think of physical violence. As one of your respondents from your survey said, men are often abused in psychological, emotional, and verbal ways. Yes, women too, of course. But those are not the only ways in which men are abused. So the violence may be a part of the abuse, but violence is not just physical. Yes? It's abusive when we demean someone else, when we belittle their efforts, when we make them feel less than, and we use coercive, meaning force, tactics to keep them in line and in control. And often that can be psychological as well as physical. So we need to take a sort of broader look at what violence is, not just physical violence.
Okay. All right.
And if I may also add, and Prof. Carpenter is obviously correct, yes, but there's also sexual abuse that, like, for example, withholding sex and manipulating in sexual interaction. You did mention emotional, economic abuse can occur, especially in a situation where the female may be earning more in the relationship and you use money as a way to control and manipulate the relationship. And then in today's world, we talk about the use of technology, which can be used in an abusive way in relationships. Like, for example,
tell you what, Professor, but that's such an interesting point to raise in there. We don't want to lose your train of thought. You're up on a break. We'll be right back.
Make a good move to the Grace Food Festival, August 23rd, Hope Gardens. Children under 12 enter free. The time by Grace Food Festival is
7:45. We're making the markets better for you. In the last financial year, more than $100 million was spent on repairs for Sentence Bay, Ocho Rios, Santa Cruz, and the Yallas markets. We completed phase 1 of the new Buff Bay market, and the final phase will be completed before the end of this year. Alexandria and the Spalding markets are set for rehabilitation in this financial year. The Ministry of Local Government and Community Development is working to modernize our markets, making them more convenient for doing business. Local government is working for you.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. We're having another interesting discussion on the topic when she, not he, is the abuser. And in so doing, we have online Professor Karen Carpenter, who has reminded us that she's the former head and senior lecturer of the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, as well as Professor Wendell Abel, who is head of community health and psychiatry in the Faculty of Medical Sciences. Before the break, Professor Abel, you were telling us about the technological, perhaps social media aspect of it.
Yeah, before we get there, I did realize you were also introducing me as the head of community health and psychiatry, because I too am not the head.
Two corrections.
Yeah,
all right.
It's actually Kenneth James, because I realize sometimes the information doesn't go out.
Yes, and you're talking about technology a while ago. So please continue.
But we're talking. I mentioned the whole issue of technological abuse, within the context of domestic violence. And I mean, one may ask, what is this? How can this manifest itself, right? Or sometimes people refer to it as
cyber
technology, yes, enable domestic violence or cyber abuse. But it feels like, for example, controlling partners' password. You put location device on a car to, for example, track them. You constantly access their computer and monitor their viewing history, and use this to monitor and as a way of controlling the person. And out of this, you may get emotional abuse and physical abuse and so on. Yeah. And this has become very, obviously very common, especially with the emergence of technology and the fact that technology is accessible. And a lot of times we don't talk about it, but it's common, and probably more common than we think.
Yes.
And I think, Wendell, to just jump in on that comment you're making, I find that people now report surveillance of their partners' phones, technological devices, cars, etc., as if it were normal.
Yeah.
So they're saying, I went into her phone, I put a tracker on her car, I cloned her phone, and they say it as if this is normative behavior.
Yeah.
They don't say it with any shame. They say, well, that's how I knew.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to applaud that behavior.
Yeah.
That's a complete breach of privacy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's your wife, your child, or anyone else. That's a breach of privacy.
Yes, yes.
Although
I suppose if there's a clear understanding that this is done, yes, between partners, right?
That we mutually exchange our access. That's a completely different
and we're
thing
doing
from
it
breaking
for
into
security.
someone's phone.
Yes, and we do it for security purposes and so on.
Yes,
but
and we both are very aware that we have the trackers, etc., on the vehicles, on the phones, etc. But often it's reported as, I got one up on the other person.
Yes, and
I want to
go ahead, sir.
Yeah, and that's, I was going to say, Wendell, what we've both said is the notion of control and power over. This is a very important component of abuse. Yes? One party feels that they have power over the other and has a right to controlling the other person. And that's often where the abuse takes place. It's not mutual. There's no mutuality here.
And as you mentioned the word mutuality, especially within the Jamaican context, what impact does an abusive female partner have on men in general, would you say? Beginning with you, Prof. Abel.
Well, Abuse in any context, right, is going to affect people almost in a similar way, right? First of all, the person may feel control in the environment. They may feel unsafe. It could lead to, they may feel vulnerable. A lot of times it's associated with a lot of shame, especially among males. Can you imagine a man being in a relationship where he's experiencing abused by a female partner, and you know how difficult that would be for him to go and share that with his friends, because in our society, man must be wrong and strong,
Be
So
laughed
there's,
at, eh?
yes, you're laughed at
Mocked.
and ostracized and mocked, yes,
Yes.
especially if you're sharing that in the wrong bar, or anywhere at all. But it's a shame, and it is this shame sometimes that also prevents people from seeking help, yes?
Right.
And this may also result in a long-term mental health problems, anxiety, depression, um, substance abuse, suicidal behavior, and so on.
Yeah.
Still with us, Prof?
Yes,
Abel?
yes.
Very
Are
much
you
here.
through?
I'm listening
Okay.
to my good colleague
Yes, Professor
mention
Carpenter.
all the things that are absolutely associated with this. I often go back to things, for instance, that are precursors to the adult mental health abusive relationship. Trauma is something like other things that we learn in childhood that we carry forward into adulthood. And I often refer to how we treat our quote unquote boy children, the abuse that we visit on them, usually by a mother. We have to be very careful about the kinds of bonds that we're creating with these young men. They're not respectful on either side, because it's either the man is requiring a woman to submit, or the woman, as a mother, is beating the boy child to a frazzle. We have to make kids accustomed to loving and exchanges and interchanges, so that as adults, they reject the abusive relationships and they don't enact abuse themselves. Abusers abuse. People who have been abused abuse.
Right.
So we have to look very much at our culture that encourages, don't spare the rod and spoil the child, and women must submit. These are very wrong-headed notions if we're going to respect someone's humanity.
Yes.
And in fact, Karen, if I may add, because I was going to touch on that myself, the whole issue of childhood abuse, yes? Because in our society, there's a high level of exposure to trauma, childhood trauma.
Yes.
And we know that one of the consequences, the result of childhood trauma. Well, first of all, childhood trauma occurs in situations where children don't feel, or let me put it in a positive way first, that for children to develop well, they need to be in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment, right? It must be safe, stable, nurturing. And whenever this doesn't occur, right, especially when there's trauma, then that affects the development of a child. And one of the outcome of that is that it interferes with their relationships. Yes? Relationship with their parents within the home environment as they grow up, but also relationship with their partner, intimate partner. They have difficulty in their relationship. And as Professor Carpenter just pointed out, that we sometimes repeat what we grew up knowing, right? But it's also said, is that people, if you don't heal from what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those who never cut you.
Absolutely.
Yes? If you never heal from what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those who never cut you. So people go into their relationships, right, having experienced childhood trauma, never healed, and have problems in terms of establishing stable, healthy relationship. Yeah. And they go into these relationships and they bleed continuously. And we see a lot of that in our society. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
do we not run the risk of finding excuses or actually offering excuses for abusers? when we talk about the past, their trauma and all that, because some people may argue that many persons have been traumatized in their childhood for many reasons, but they are not abusive. Your response to that, Professor
Well,
Carpenter?
well, Wendell, I'm going to want you to jump in on this one as well. But I don't, look, I think that statement in itself, and I'm not attributing that to you,
No.
is the excuse. It's an excuse to say, if we actually validate, acknowledge, and accept that people's early childhood trauma as a child can negatively impact their experiences as an adult, then we are actually just falling into a trap. If it is true, if it exists and it is reality, then we have to deal with it. It's simply saying, oh, that makes it easy for them to have an excuse to behave in the ways they do, doesn't address the problem. And we see the problem. And actually, if you look back at our figures for this last year, when it comes to abuse and reported cases of abuse, etc., our abuse to children is higher than that of our abuse to adults. We've got to address the way we bring up our children, how we discipline our children, and how we treat men and women as equal parties in the society.
Yeah.
We've got to change our cultural notions around those behaviors.
Yeah. We could go on and on, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to just throw this in before we wrap. Professor Abel, perhaps you might have to take this. Christian Coleman reportedly said he does not believe she, that is Shakara, should have been arrested. What does that say to you? What are the implications of that?
All right. Well, I suppose, since you've forced me into a discussion in terms of this particular situation, and sometimes I don't like to discuss specific situations, but this has become public. The reality, I think, what has been highlighted there is that there are a lot of ongoing issues in her life, yes? But I'm coming back to what we were saying, that a lot of times the root of it is the childhood trauma, yes? And if you never heal from what hurt you, you're going to bleed on those who never cut you. And I suppose a comment like that may be coming out of an understanding that this person has complex psychological issues going back to their early childhood experience and trauma, and recognizing that a legal mechanism may not be the
What about
solution.
accountability, though, at some stage?
Well, accountability is important, and I think she has also put out something accepting her, taking responsibility for her actions, and actually saying clearly that I am going to make myself accountable, which is very good, excellent, yes? And in a situation like that, it opens the pathway for healing and possible reconciliation. Yes.
And I want us to be clear that accountability and punishment are not the same thing. Yes? Because accountability, that leads to what Professor Abel just said. Healing, therapy.
They're not
treatment.
mutually exclusive, though.
No, but I would want us to be less punitive and more curative. Again, we go for the big stick. No, we go for the big stick without understanding human beings and how they operate and what drives them. And if we're not addressing the problem, punishing someone doesn't address it.
Okay, got to leave it there. Thank you.
In fact, punishment can actually re-traumatize people.
Precisely.
And nowadays, we're talking about trauma-informed approaches to persons to recognize the problem and to facilitate healing.
Got to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Fascinating stuff. Thanks for joining us. Have a safe and productive day.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for a discussion of topical and controversial issues. For information, and I'll get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This, of course, has been the Morning Watch, thanks to our producer, Sonia Stewart, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint, returning you to Love in the Morning.